Your eyes are mud! So last night, I watched Raised in Captivity with various friends of mine from Romeo and Juliet and whatnot, classmates, etc. I believe. I'm not really sure if they were actually there. And a couple of my classmates were actually in the production. And I just got off the phone talking to another classmate about it. And I realized that I actually need to do this podcast. Lizzie, if you're listening, this is for you. Yeah. Anyway. So, I was thinking about talking about this anyway, but then, like I said, Lizzie, she mentioned this, and I was like, you know what? I really should do a podcast for this, because I have opinions about this play, and I'd like to share them. To give you a gist of it, you have a cast of approximately 5 people. These are the main characters, I would say. You've got a couple. Maybe it's only 4, now that I think about it. Pretty much. You have one other character whose life experience is part of the whole reason. It's the precipitating event of how the play occurs. I'm saying words. I've only been up for like an hour, and I'm exhausted because I went to a party last night with those cast members and stayed up until like 5 or something. I don't know. Stayed at the party till 3:30. Anywho, so this woman effectively dies, and how they depict her death, she basically just walks on stage, walks up into a coffin, and then they close it on her. Now, I find out later from the director that there's actually a false back, and she was able to get out after the first scene. Nevertheless, though, that would be kind of stressful for anybody who might have issues with being in a coffin, even if it's for only 5 minutes. And then you enter in that woman's daughter, that woman's daughter's husband, and that woman's son. And apparently, the woman died of a shower head having been launched off of the shower arm hole water pressure thing because of the extra water pressure caused her to, I suppose, have some sort of brain damage. That's usually how those things happen. I don't know about the shower head killing things, just, usually when you get hit in the head, you usually die of brain damage. If you die, anyway. So, the characters, the entire concept of this story is that everybody is broken. They are all trapped in their own mind. And they have to suffer as we all suffer. We all suffer from something. And despite the drama, the production is a comedy. It's an amazing comedy, by the way. It was so much fun to watch. I could not recommend it more so. Unfortunately, we went to the last showing, so I guess you can't watch it. Now, you can watch the production because it's not just a production that was made for college. It is an actual production, so who's playing it where, I'm not sure. So if you're interested, Raised in Captivity, that's the name of it. However, one thing I learned that the director made a choice about, well, the cast, I guess you could say, but at the same time, how things were executed. And in my mind, I felt that this was actually so good that there shouldn't be any other form. I mean, obviously, there's purists and stuff like that, and that's the whole nature of being a director, is creating your own vision, and that's what's awesome. And so obviously, I'm more or less being somewhat dramatic when I say this, that there shouldn't be another form. But to sort of elaborate on it, in the original scene when Bernadette, that's the woman's daughter, and her husband, Kip, they're at the cemetery, and Kip seems to have an issue with teeth because he's a dentist, and he seems to be very afraid of these things. And he's seeing all the stone heads, or headstones. Yeah. He's looking at the headstones, and they're reminding him of teeth, and he's freaking out, and she's freaking out. She's freaking out because he's freaking out, and her brother is there, and I think his name's Patrick. I don't have everybody's name on hand. I could probably look it up, but I'm just going in this blind. Fuck it. Patrick has his own issues. He seems to be upset, yet happy that his mother's died. They don't know their father. And just the way the story unfolds and the way the characters express themselves. Bernadette's this very tiny, she's such a sweet person too. I talked to her afterwards, and she was so adoring, and she loved I absolutely loved her. I loved her performance. It was amazing. I mean, when you are, what's the word I'm looking for? When you're so engrossed in a character that you don't feel like it's somebody acting, that's some solid fucking skill. I come to find out later, she's been doing this on and off for 10 years. She's 23. Well, there you go. That's pretty common, my understanding. I mean, she really, and I said this so many times because I did not want to make anybody feel one way or the other. Not to diminish the quality of the cast, but she felt like the standout. She felt like the star. And she had such an amazing performance. There's so many damn words. Oh my God. I thought it was bad enough when I had to memorize what I had to memorize for fucking Romeo and Juliet. Jesus Christ. I think her first scene, she had more words than I did the entire play. And she rattled him off like a crazy neurotic woman. And it was done so well. It's like you wanted to feel for this woman. You wanted to laugh at her pain. And in a way, it was kind of sexy. I don't know. Maybe I'm just broken like that. Who knows? Her husband was portrayed by a classmate of mine. And he had the lines that I would want, because they got most of the laughs. Everybody else built up to a point. And he played Kip, and then he delivered the punchline. And sometimes he just delivered his own lines, and they were punchlines themselves. It must have been so much fun playing that character, really. Just because of how unbelievably funny his lines were supposed to be. Not everything was funny, but his delivery is amazing. And, honestly though, ultimately I would say that the brother is really the star of the show, character-wise, because everything is effectively revolving around him. He is inserting himself into other people's lives. Everybody is in some way or another in contact with him. He's got this weird disconnect with his dead mother now. He and his sister have always had weird issues, and she has weird issues with him, and that she thinks she says that it's his fault that she has an eating disorder, and and it's all about self-image and stuff like that. And it's I'm gonna break away for a moment. I'm still gonna talk about it, but the reality was this was life. And I think that's why it was so hilarious. Because we all could recognize something. Whether it was a parent who felt neglectful, whether they were or not, it doesn't even matter. Running away from the things that we're afraid of. Trying to change our life in order to better it. Even if it's drastic. Taking on risks that put you in perhaps precarious or even dangerous situations. Family that invade your life in such a way that you can't avoid it, but you really want to, and yet somehow it ends up turning out for okay in the end. And that it really is what happened. Everything kind of turned out okay for everybody. So it still had that storybook ending, but it was no storybook that you would likely ever read, other than, an actual play. It was a story of humans, and of their struggles, and of the challenges that they overcome, and obviously some very dramatic moments, like somebody stabbing their own eyeballs out and living in the same clothes for who knows how many months on end, being the same person, that is. But ultimately, it was just, like I said, it was a story of people. And it was told incredibly well by these actors. They really deserve far more chances to continue to pursue acting. It was such a solid cast. And the director, I had a brief interaction with the director. He's going to be my instructor next semester, one of them. And I just feel like just kind of understanding just even a little bit of him, it makes me want to understand more. I don't know, it really did leave me thinking, despite the fact that I was laughing majority of the time. The only scene in the entire thing was sort of a dream sequence, if you will, when the mother comes out of the coffin and starts talking to her son. And we come to find out that the mother was actually raped, and the two kids are twins of that event. They are byproducts of that rape. And so the stories that mom told about dad were all lies, obviously, to help save the kids and probably herself from the strife that's associated with it, because that whole scene was the most unfunny thing there. It was dark and depressing, but it, in my mind, looking back on it, even though at the time I was kind of like, can we finish this, please? I'm kind of like, I don't want to watch this. I'm watching a play that's kind of funny again. Looking on it now, it helped glue together a lot of things. And so it was necessary, despite the purely dramatic and real, very real thing about it. The elements of that story were, well, they may have been a fabrication in their presentation, but they're all too real. And having reality thrust in your face like that, it's jarring. It really is. But it's a valuable thing to have anyway. So, I guess at this point I want to move back and talk a little bit about the cast. I find out, like I said, this ensemble cast doesn't exist in the normal play. And I talked to a couple of the people who were there, and they were so fantastic, and I was like, you have good actors playing characters that, although not really speaking roles, to some degree they were, it really helped. It was like the icing on the cake. If I had seen the original, I probably would have enjoyed it, and then if I had turned around and watched this, I probably would have been like, that was what was missing. Now, I don't know how they executed it in the others. I'm just full of shit at this point. But to help reinforce what I'm saying, there's a moment when Bernadette is yelling at her husband Kip. What it was about, I think it had something to do with when he was painting. By the way, the reason I said your eyes are mud at the beginning is because Kip becomes a painter. He quits his job as a dentist and he just starts to paint for the hell of it. Well, he apparently has become enlightened to everything. Everything is beautiful to him at this point. Which, if everything is beautiful, then nothing is, if you will. But he's looking at his wife, and he's awed by her. But he's not awed by her as who she is as a person. At least that's not what I was picking up on. It's that he is so full of this passion for everything. So when he looks at her, she seems to feel that, and she even makes this comparison because he had talked about seeing a dead horse, and he was like, it was, again, the ensemble cast helped pantomime this event that he was speaking of. So while he was talking, they were effectively he was narrating their actions. It was so well done too. It's like, it felt like choreography. It really did. And you have this persona who is another classmate in the same class as the guy playing Kip, who is portraying like this sort of ego of his, because occasionally when the characters would like walk around or they would talk or some of their body language, they would be mimicked by specific people within the ensemble. And even the ensemble helped to sell this idea of like, there's a flashback scene and you have the two siblings who are portrayed by their ensemble cast. Seriously, it was so well done. I'm giving it no credit. By the way that I'm describing it, I'm giving it 0 credit because I suck at describing this kind of stuff. At least I feel like I do. Maybe you think otherwise. But it was just so much fun to watch. But it wasn't just fun. It was fascinating from a directorial perspective, from just deconstructing the way that, how does a person think like this? Why would they think to do this with this cast, to make it happen like this? And to go back and to help kind of recombine all of this, when Kip says that his wife's eyes are mud, he's trying to create all these visual cues to sell what he's saying. You've come to find out he's painting with only fucking white. Whatever. I think it ends up being texture work at that point. Because you have another character who, by the way, very solid performance, amazing timing on her lines, which now having come off my play, I understand is a very difficult thing to do. Because if you're trying to remember your lines, it's hard to know exactly when you need to come in. And with a production like this, quick timing, quick responses at the end of somebody's sentences is key. It really is. It's the difference between experience and none. But when he's talking to her and he's describing these weird things like your breasts are like lettuce, your hands are like sparrows, and she gets pissed off at him. And she gets off the stool and she's stomping around and she's trying to say nice things, and then almost like in a Tourette style thing, she just can't. She has no filter and she just bursts at him and starts screaming at him. This is where the ensemble, I feel, helps really solidify this idea. First of all, there's the main ensemble character, or the main ensemble cast member, who is effectively attached to the Bernadette character. They are each other in this regard. And sometimes even the ensemble cast ego, if you will, kind of even gives attitude to the character, causing them like to stop in their tracks and stuff like that. It's so well done. And then she's screaming at him. She tries to calm down, blah, blah, blah. But then she screams again, and another ensemble cast member comes in and screams at the same time. And then it happens a third time. So you have this visual representation of the buildup of anger. In my mind, it blew my mind. Because to me, that is amazing. That is awesome to see in physical form the way the mind escalates in an argument. It's beautiful. It really is. You have him describing him going off and apparently there was a horse and it died and its stomach had burst. He wasn't aware of why. He even mentions this. And the ensemble cast members, you got a couple of them who are laying down, portraying the silhouette, if you will, the outline of a horse. They're trying to portray a horse as best they can. And then you have his ego character who's like reaching up as he's like pulling entrails out and up to the sky, almost like it's a sacrifice to some sort of perverse god of art. And when you have characters who are walking away, but then their ensemble characters stop them, and the way that the actor responds as if they just had a thought and the thought stopped them. And hell, there was the flashback scene, and it was apparently a hot August, and the two siblings were at this party. I can't remember, I think it was a birthday party. And it's like super hot outside, and this clown comes up and he's like freaking everybody out. And the only person there who seems to be even connecting with this clown is his daughter, is his sister, who, as we've established, is fucking deranged. Seriously, I don't know what it is about psychology. Some years ago, back when I was, I think, either still in high school or right out of high school, I was over at a friend's house and I was talking to his mother, and I was pretty much in the deep end of my depression. And I had been learning a little bit here and there about psychology, but not much. And his mother had told me that I would be good at psychology. And my response was, but I don't like people. Which, looking back on it now, is totally wrong. But I do love how the mind works. I love understanding. But not just that. I love how it's portrayed. How we can try to interpret things. I'm not good at deconstructing everything on the spot. That's for damn sure. It takes me time. That's why I can still get into an argument with somebody over something fucking stupid, because my brain reacts faster. The emotional side of my brain. And I think that's just human nature. As much as I understand about how the brain works, I am of the understanding that that is how we work. The emotional is more of a survival instinct, more of a survival necessity than cerebral consciousness. And, if you look at the evolution of the size of brains and primates and the like, the prefrontal cortex is the more recent production. Everything else is like basic bodily functions, emotional changes, and then, there's thought. And even within thought, there's various forms of thought, and then there's abstract thought. The ability to deconstruct something. And in my mind, it's fascinating that the mind can analyze itself. It's gotten to a point of self-awareness. Something that we hope to achieve within the realm of computation. We want a self-aware AI. Artificial intelligence. That's the word I was looking for. I couldn't figure out what the fuck it was. Just having a brain fart just there. Which is an interesting metaphor? Simile? I don't know. But the whole production, Raised in Captivity, it felt professional. I think the young lady who played Bernadette was definitely the star. And I told her that. And, that's good that somebody like that exists in our school. Come to find out, she auditioned for Juilliard, managed to make it in, but couldn't go because of family things. I'm like, you've got to rectify that, because you're amazing. And I don't know, maybe I'm what the word I'm looking for? Maybe I'm just starstruck, because maybe I found a real star. And again, I mean no disparagement to anybody else in that cast. Just Sometimes that's how our emotions work. It's how our brains work. I feel like I could go on, but I don't really know what else to say. I feel like at this point I would just be gushing about the cast members and it wouldn't really be sensical. I mean, hell, I'm describing why I shouldn't extend this podcast, and that of in itself is just ridiculous, redundant. Yet I'm still going. Why is that? I don't know.